Coming up next.
Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to have you join us today at the Security Transformation Summit. I'm Rick Peters, the Field CISO for Operational Technology for Fortinet. And we're here today to talk about integrated and automated cybersecurity that empowers military mission support. Particularly relevant for me, I spent the majority of my career prior to Fortinet with the U.S. intelligence community. So this is like coming home again and working with leaders that I called close colleagues for the majority of my life. So I'm excited about that. And joining us today, we have three really terrific leaders across the services. First, we start with Major General Matthew Easley. He's the CISO for the U.S. Army. Welcome, Matt. Also have Miss Wanda Jones-Heath. She's the CISO for the U.S. Air Force. And Wanda and I go back a great deal. I spent 5 years at Ramstein Air Force Base. So it's great to see you again, Wanda.
Absolutely.
And third, but certainly not least, we have Rear Admiral David Dermanelian. He is the Assistant Commandant for C4IT for the U.S. Coast Guard. Welcome, David. So again, it's terrific to have you all here, and the topic is so timely. 2020 has been anything but a normal year. Heading into it, cybersecurity strategy and protection of our assets and resources that give us conditional readiness across the services was still top of mind. So let's jump right in. The services are generally recognized as a 24/7 mission with readiness as top priority. How did COVID-19 affect mobile and expeditionary operations? And I'll start with Major General Easley.
So the Army, as we will know, is currently engaged in combat operations in multiple places around the world today. So those have not stopped, and we need to move forces to support those operations, both from the active Army, from the Army Reserve, and the Army National Guard, and those operations still continue. Obviously, we've made adjustments. I mean, there's more quarantining. We've formed small cohorts of bubbles, but from the standpoint of regular operations and mobilizations and troop deployments, it's fairly on schedule as we've been. I mean, we've been doing major exercises. Project Convergence was just completed a few weeks ago, and we know things have slowed down a little, but we've made the proper adjustments.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. It's that conditionally, I would have thought the services have to sustain business despite what's going on, even in a health global pandemic. Wanda, for the Air Force, can you kind of give me a glimpse of what it's like today using the same metrics?
Oh, absolutely. Just as he mentioned, the mission doesn't stop. COVID was a game changer when it came to our infrastructure and the things that we needed to ensure that the communication and the connectivity and the access was down to the warfighter. That's no different. And we were able to pivot. We were able to partner with actually the DoD and inside of the Department of Air Force ecosystem to ensure that we still had capabilities to do our mission to the edge.
Outstanding. How about for the Coast Guard, David?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. We continue to operate. The bottom line is, like our sister services, the mission marches on. So if you can imagine, going at sea and engaging on the illegal, unreported, or unregulated fishing, that occurs, that is currently out there very much on the commandant's mind. Readiness is the top priority right now. So we continue to operate. So we've adjusted some TTP. So in terms of our engagement at sea with those who are breaking the law or fishing illegally, or interdicting those who choose to break the law. So we've adjusted our techniques and procedures to protect our Coast Guardsmen, but also continue to serve the mission. So I think we continue to operate.
For the Coast Guard, Air Force, and Army, that's inspiring for me. I trusted this was the case, and it's great to hear because, the readiness and the persistence and the commitment to our mission has always been our number one priority. Of course, safely accomplishing those missions is equally important, but of course, we got to balance that. Let's move on to a slightly different point, but it's still connected. The reliance and dependence on trust for accomplishing secure data transactions in cloud environments appears to be pervasive across IT and OT business. How has that technology shift influenced service operations? And this time we'll start with you, Wanda.
Anytime we have a rapid shift in trend in technology, it drives a different type of discussion. We're definitely moving to the cloud. We know that there is a great capability by doing that. A big influence for us is the roles and responsibility, of the cloud provider versus what we would do for ourselves. Big changes in incident response. How do we notify our customers when something happens? And so all of that is still part of what we need to do. And of course, we need to look at the policy that kind of shapes how we operate in the cloud environment across the Air Force.
Thank you. David, can you comment on this one?
Yeah, of course. So I would argue that, moving to the cloud environment is not necessarily more secure. It's a different operating environment. So we've had to adjust there, and we're learning every day how to thwart adversaries and just keep information flowing. So whether or not a Coast Guard cutter is 2 miles offshore or 2,000 miles offshore working for example, the Pacific Area Commander, Vice Admiral Fagan, or the Indo-PACOM Commander. So I'll offer you this. We've had to do an awful lot of thinking as well regarding how cutters operate, when we are sucking off of that small soda straw of connectivity. So, and sometimes that connectivity gets severed. So the DDIL, or, when we are in the absence of connectivity, we have to design with cloud access. And when that access to the cloud gets severed. So I don't think that's probably very different than certainly our brothers and sisters over in the other services.
Terrific point. Resilience in this space is everything. Matt, can you provide insight or comment from the Army perspective?
No, great questions. And the Army's, as the other services are all behind moving systems to the cloud where appropriate. And that's where I think some of the analysis is going in now, as opposed to just a mass movement to the cloud, is to understand how do we take our legacy systems, rationalize them, figure out what parts should stay where they are. Maybe they're just already doing a great job in a legacy data center and we're not going to be able to improve those. Other ones where we may have come up with new operating concepts for cloud-based systems. I think there's great work happening between the Air Force and the Army today with the joint all-domain command and control systems on how we want to be able to share information. How do we find targets using all sorts of different sensing systems and be able to really realize this concept of any shooter, any target. And I think data integrity is a huge part of that. How can we trust our sensors? How can we trust the messages being passed forth through this very complicated command and control systems that we're going to be putting together? It's going to be a multi-cloud environment, from tactical clouds to commercial clouds. It's going to be using all different sorts of communication networks, from our tactical systems to commercial lease circuits. So we have to be able to trust who's sending the information, that the data integrity is trustworthy, and that we know that the information is delivered. Just like we've been doing in our enterprise systems for decades now, we have to move that to our tactical systems.
Yeah, I'm so excited you mentioned the term trust. That's always top of mind for me. We talk about being resilient and understanding what's going on behaviorally in our systems, but it really does come down to being able to build that trust and being inherently aware. Matt, I'm going to stay with you for this next query. We're seeing greater commitment, I think, even in the services to the commercial industry for network security, and it's fostered a diverse array of competitive solutions. Providers who market the latest capabilities to address IT and OT challenges. What's the role of industry in raising the bar for the services? And is there a perceived value in establishing partnerships to accomplish strategic mission objectives?
No, I love to engage with industry partners in this. I think it's a key area that they can help the services understand how we can get consistency using standardizations and common architectures for our systems. I know the Army has, at least for our enterprise information environment, has evolved dramatically over the last decade, where we had regional cyber centers all across the world using different tools, different standards, trying to understand network compliance was a challenge. Again, working with this and other OSD level agencies, they've helped us rationalize some of those systems. So when we're reporting on one set of systems, we can compare our reports to the Air Force's, to the Coast Guard's, to the Navy and other the fourth estate systems.
Excellent.
But having industry help us come up with those standards, especially for our operational technology systems, is key. Because right now, I mean, the Army has 128 camp posts and stations, and as we connect that operational technology into the DODN, it's being done in different ways each place, and we're not getting economies of scales, and it's harder to defend the network that way.
Absolutely. And, and we're challenged when we talk about OT with legacy technology. Not everything knits together beautifully. There's a lot of dependence on hardware and software. Many would have archived decades ago, but it's still out there because it works and it supports and keeps our missions moving forward. Okay, for the Coast Guard, David, can you shed some light on the relationship with industry?
Yeah, sure, Rick. So I don't think Coast Guard's unique in this way. We are highly dependent. We don't own a lot of that delivery infrastructure, the networks. We rely on industry greatly. So partnering with them is extraordinarily important. The Coast Guard has much smaller units than our sister services, but we're deployed at 800 sites around the globe. And so when a network fails, we really feel the pain. We won't necessarily own. As we partner with industry, that they're paying attention to the supply chain risk, because we don't want to just employ any tools or products on our networks or that we connect with from untrusted sources. And that's very tricky business. So we're relying on them to do their due diligence for the nation. And then as we subscribe and we receive services from them, it's really important that they pay attention to that. And the last thing I'll offer, Rick, is it's really beneficial where you don't make me get a PhD in how to unscramble the code of the contracting. So simplicity and I don't want to be a PhD in understanding all the different nuances of contracting. So when that can be harmonized, so a dirt farmer like me from Michigan can understand how how those services are costed out, and simplicity of services is really helpful. And if they're paying attention to the supply chain, then I'll gladly subscribe to their services. But I think we all have complex operating environments, so we need them to pay attention to those two elements, Rick.
So terrific comments. I'm a big champion of paying attention to supply lines and also looking at how to treat this problem as more of an ecosystem, right? Because complexity is making it so much more difficult, particularly when we're trying to execute mission. For the Air Force, Wanda, what are the relationships like? What are you seeing there?
I mean, I agree 100% with my sister services. We cannot fight without our partners, our defense industrial base. We ask that they protect the data just like we protect it. We need to know that they are integrated in everything we do. Interoperability is important. And, innovation, we look to industry for innovation, best practices, bring what you have to the table based on what the current approach is. And so I certainly agree that, partnership is something that we all have to do, and having that partner beside us, understanding our operating environment is very important.
Excellent. Wanda, I'm going to keep it with you for a final query here. And it really has more to do now, we're talking specifically about technology, but advancements in technology kind of drive the appeal for gaining access to greater volumes of intelligence. Key to tactical and strategic decision-making. And that's easy to argue that one, but with the acceleration of enterprise growth, what kind of challenges are you seeing, and how do you approach raising the bar on security? And I'm really talking about thinking in all the dimensions: people, process, technology.
I would start by saying our current chief of staff talks about, accelerating change or lose. And that is so true. Today's environment would not allow us to win in tomorrow's fight. And so people, we have to ensure that they are able to operate in this new environment. They need to have the skill sets, We know that we need to retain our current skill sets, retrain, as we move with technology, and then recruit. We need that fresh blood and fresh thought to come in. From a process standpoint, the pandemic really showed us that we have a lot of policies and procedures that are outdated. And so part of that is breaking down those barriers so that we can enable transition to a digital environment. And then lastly, technology. We need to automate as much as we can, use our current tools to its maximum capability, and then you put it all together. And for the Department of Air Force, it's really about having an enterprise IT strategy that helps the warfighter.
That's excellent. I mean, modernization and the acceleration of technology is certainly not going to diminish. We're seeing an appetite for data that's just extraordinary. For the Air Force, it's terrific. But how about for the Army, Matt?
So concur. I mean, the Department of the Army has many of the same challenges as our sister services. I mean, we have, a very large workforce, and we know we have to upskill that workforce, retrain here, hire more, bring in new soldiers every year. And we know we have to update, both our traditional training systems for our normal training and doctrine command, how we indoctrinate new soldiers, as well as our civilian and legacy soldiers. So within the CIO's office, we've started a new initiative called Quantum Leap, where we're going to upskill many of our IT workforce, again, using state-of-the-art training systems so they can do a lot of this in a virtual fashion. But we know, as we've talked about the cloud and data integrity, a lot of that skill set we just have never had in the Army, and I know the other services haven't had it as either. So there's just a number of initiatives across the Army, from our software factory that we're building down in Austin, so we can just start owning our data, owning our software, and start deploying this.
It's really exciting to see that investment in the people and in the enterprise, because there's multiple threads there to pull. David, you look like you're agreeing. How about for the Coast Guard?
Yeah, our Commandant published our Coast Guard's technology revolution, and the notion of all this tsunami of technology that can really empower our missions is fantastic. I'll offer, it's really important to get really good at what I'm calling commodity security, whether or not it's IT or OT. Commodity. Let's leverage our nation's really brain power to make that commodity security really robust. Get really good at it, so that if an adversary wants to break in and wants to disrupt our information or degrade our confidence in it, they're going to have to make a lot of noise. They're going to have to really try hard. So the more that our industry partners help us, in this case with the Coast Guard's tech revolution, by making commodity products, services, and I'm calling it commodity security, really challenging for an adversary, so that there's not a lot of low-hanging fruit. So I'll offer that, Rick.
Outstanding. It's amazing how fast time flies when we're having so much fun and talking about stuff that really matters. We got to close this terrific session and exchange. I want to say thank you so much for your candid comments. I think what we're seeing is enriching, and it addresses the fact that change is happening. Automated cybersecurity is certainly foundational to continuing to empower all of our services. I want to thank you, each of you, for your continued persistence and loyalty to our nation. It's foundational to success in what we do, both here close at home and, of course, across the globe. And I want to thank all of the folks who tuned in today to this session as well. And we hope you enjoy the rest of the Security Transformation Summit here. And thanks again, and stay safe, please.